The horse beneath you is breathing harder than you are. That is how you know something is wrong. Its flanks shudder, ribs soaring the air, sweat darkening the leather until it smells sour and animal. You should feel the reins trembling in your hands, should feel the animal's panic transmitting itself through muscle and bone. You feel nothing. The leather might as well be water. Your fingers might as well not exist. Ahead, the ground is flat and exposed. Pale earth, broken only by scrub and low stone. The sun sits high, punishing, flattening all colour into white and dust. Somewhere beyond the horizon, an army is moving. You cannot see it yet, but the air carries it. A dry metallic tang, the distant vibration of many bodies compressing the land. 26,000 men. You know the number because your advisors whispered it to you like a death sentence, because numbers are easier to say than fear. You're 16 years old. You are the king. Your skin is dying. Inside the gloves, beneath the silk wraps, your hands are rotting without pain. The disease has already eaten the nerves. That is the cruelty of it. No warning, no alarm, only decay progressing quietly, like rust spreading under paint. You grip the sword because you are told to grip it. The metal presses into your palm. You see the pressure whiten the skin. You feel nothing. The men behind you know this. They try not to look at your hands. They look at your back instead, straight in the saddle, wrapped in armour too heavy for a healthy boy, let alone one whose body has been hollowed out from the inside. They follow because there is nowhere else to go. Jerusalem is behind them. Fire is already ahead. A rider comes hard from the south, horse stumbling, hooves throwing up chalky dust. He doesn't slow as he reaches you. He just shouts. Villages burning, wells poisoned, no resistance. The enemy has crossed the border and spread like spilled oil. Someone says the sensible thing. Retreat. Sensible. Fall back to Ascalon. Stone walls. Water. Time. Someone else says it louder, as if volume might make it more convincing. You do not answer immediately. You watch the dust lift and drift. Feel heat press against your face like a physical weight. If you retreat, the city dies first. Not you. The city. You nod once. That is all. The order moves down the line without words. Horses turn. Armour creaks. The sound is not triumphant. It is the sound of men rearranging themselves around an unavoidable fact. By midday, Ascalon rises ahead, its walls pale against the sky, the sea glinting beside it like a blade. The gates swallow you. Inside, the air is worse. Packed bodies, animals, fear sweating through stone. From the ramparts, smoke columns mark the land inland, black fingers clawing upward. Each one is a place that existed this morning. The enemy does not bother to besiege you. That is the insult. A thin screen of soldiers blocks the gates, just enough to watch, not enough to fight. Not. The rest of the army flows past, northward, careless, heavy with confidence. You stand on the wall and watch them go. You feel nothing in your hands. Something hot runs inside your boot. You do not look down. Night comes, sleep does not. Your joints throb in a way pain cannot reach anymore, a deep pressure like something swelling inside the bone. You listen to the city breathe, to men whispering prayers they do not believe will be answered. You know this is not a siege. This is an erasure happening around you while you wait behind stone. At dawn, you make the decision that terrifies everyone more than the enemy. The gate will open. The blocking force is not ready. They are laughing when the doors split apart, laughter turning into shouting as 500 armoured bodies surge forward all at once. There is no finesse. There is weight and speed and the brutal arithmetic of surprise. The line breaks because it was never meant to hold. Men die quickly, confused, cut down before they understand that the crippled king did not stay inside. Then you are out, exposed, riding north with nothing but sea on one side and fire on the other. The pace is relentless. Horses foam. Men drink sparingly, knowing there is not enough water for fear. The sun climbs again, hammering down, flattening the world into brightness and exhaustion. You stay upright because hands tie you to the saddle when your grip fails. Your thighs burn from clamping tight, compensating for feet that cannot feel the stirrups. Blood slicks the inside of your armour where metal rubs raw skin you cannot sense. The relic rides near you, wood wrapped in gold, held high so everyone can see it. The men look at it instead of at you. It gives them something solid to believe in. You do not look at it. Faith is not what keeps you moving. Habit does. The habit of waking every morning already dying. By afternoon, the land funnels inward. A shallow wadi cuts across the plain. The scouts return fast, faces pale beneath dust. Not a rear guard, not a patrol. The whole army is there, stretched out, unformed, men scattered, armour stowed, animals clogging the crossing. They are not ready because they do not think you exist. You stop. The horse stumbles as if relieved. You dismount with help, knees buckling, and sink into the dirt. The ground is cool under your palms. You press your forehead into it and breathe in dust and sweat and iron. You pray because this is the language everyone understands, because it gives shape to the moment, because it lets the men see you break before you ask them to kill. When you stand again, the shaking stops. There is only direction. The charge begins without a shout. 500 heavy bodies accelerate, lances lowering, the physics simple and unforgiving, mass times speed. The sound grows from a rumble to a roar. On the other side, confusion blooms too late. Men scramble, horses scream. The first impact is not a clash but an obliteration. Light troops crushed under armoured momentum, bodies folding, lances shattering like dry wood. You're at the front. You know this because the air changes, because the ground vibrates differently, because men are suddenly close enough that you can smell them. Fear smells sharp, acidic. Your sword rises and falls. You do not feel it strike. You see bodies drop. The enemy tries to form, but space betrays them. Wagons block movement. Animals panic. The narrow crossing becomes a choke of flesh and noise. Discipline dissolves. Panic spreads faster than orders. Somewhere ahead, the elite guard holds, a dense knot of resistance around banners and command. You push toward it because that is how this ends quickly. The men around you fight like they have already accepted death. There is no reserve, no second line. There is only forward. Time compresses. Minutes feel like heartbeats. Your vision tunnels. The heat is unbearable. The world narrows to motion and impact and the knowledge that if you fall, you will not get up again. Then the resistance breaks. Not cleanly. It collapses inward. Men sacrificing themselves to open a gap. You glimpse a figure fleeing, not on a war horse, but on something lighter, faster, vanishing into dust. The centre is gone, the army follows. By sunset, the field is silent except for moans and the rasp of exhausted breathing. You stop because your body finally refuses. Hands untie you from the saddle. When you're lowered to the ground, the cold seeps in, sudden and shocking. You have won. It does not feel like victory. It feels like survival bought with something you cannot afford to lose. The rain begins as the light fades, thin at first, then hard, drenching armour and blood and dust into mud. You close your eyes. You cannot feel the rain on your skin. You know it is there because the men start to shiver. Night does not end the killing. It only slows it, stretches it out until exhaustion replaces rage. The rain thickens, cold and punishing, turning dust into glue that clings to boots and horsehair. Men who were running a moment ago slip, fall, are trampled by others who no longer care who lies underfoot. The battlefield is no longer a place. It is a condition. You're barely conscious when they carry you away from the wadi. Your armour is dead weight now, soaked through, pressing lesions into raw flesh. When they finally unbuckle it, the metal peels away with a sound like tearing cloth. Someone swears softly. Blood has dried where it should not have dried, black and tacky, sealing fabric to skin. You feel the tug as they pull it free, not as pain but as pressure, distant and wrong, like something happening to another body. Around you, the men move differently. The charge is gone from them. What remains is shaking hands, hollow eyes, the stunned silence of people who have done something irreversible. They stare into the darkness where the enemy fled, trying to understand how 26,000 became nothing but echoes and corpses. The pursuit goes on without you. It has to. This is where ancient battles do their real work. A broken army is not defeated until it is scattered, and scattered men die easily. Your knights ride until their horses collapse, cutting down silhouettes in the rain, striking at anything that moves too slowly. No orders are needed. Momentum carries them forward, a grim efficiency fueled by the knowledge that mercy now will mean death later. The rain becomes a weapon. Men who threw away armour to run faster now shiver uncontrollably. The temperature drops with brutal speed. Bodies that survived steel begin to fail under cold and thirst. Somewhere south, the survivors are already dying without being chased. You wake before dawn in a tent that smells of wet wool and iron. Your hands are rewrapped, clumsy layers of cloth that will need changing soon. Someone has cleaned you as best they can. Someone has prayed. The victory has not reached you yet. All you know is that your body feels heavier than before, as if gravity itself has increased overnight. When the reports come, they arrive in fragments. Enemy dead counted by the thousands, banners captured, wagons seized intact. The Sultan fled. The word spreads through the camp with a cautious disbelief, like people testing ice with their feet. They expect it to crack at any moment. Outside, the land looks different in daylight. What was chaos in the dark is now a catalogue of aftermath. Broken lances litter the ground like snapped bones. Horses lie where they fell, eyes glazed, mouths open. The body is choked with debris, armour packs, bodies jammed together where the crossing narrowed. Crows already circle, patient and unafraid. The enemy army is gone, but not finished. For days, men stagger south in ones and twos, some naked, some wounded beyond help. Bedouin tribes, once cautious, now descend like scavengers, stripping anything of value, leaving people to freeze or crawl into the sand. The desert does not care who won yesterday. You are lifted back onto a horse to return to Jerusalem. The ride is slower now. There is no urgency left, only damage. Every step jars your spine. Fever creeps in, subtle at first, then insistent. Your doctors whisper, argue, apply poultices that smell of herbs and desperation. They know what this exertion has cost you, even if they cannot say it aloud. The city greets you with a noise, bells, shouting, people pressing too close trying to touch you to confirm you are real. They see a king returned from the impossible. They do not see the way your head droops when the cheering swells, the way your vision blurs at the edges. You let them believe what they need. This is what you have traded your body for. In the days that follow, the story hardens into certainty. The enemy has been annihilated. God intervened. The kingdom is safe. You listen from your chamber, lying still while servants move around you, and you feel something colder than the rain settle in your chest. Safety is a temporary condition. You know this better than anyone. South of the border, the retreat becomes a death march. The survivors stumble through wasteland with no supplies, no cohesion. The storm does not stop. Men drink from puddles fouled by animals and rot. Companions vanish overnight, claimed by exposure or violence. By the time the Sultan reaches friendly ground, he is unrecognizable, stripped of certainty as thoroughly as his men were stripped of armor. When word of his survival spreads, it carries a different tone than before. He is alive, yes, but diminished. The aura of inevitability is cracked. Those who speak of him now lower their voices, as if afraid the desert might be listening. Back in Jerusalem, your body begins to fail in quieter ways. Sensation recedes further, retreating like a tide that does not come back. Fingers curl without your permission. Your eyes ache constantly. Light becomes an enemy. The physicians avoid meeting your gaze when they change the bandages. They have no words left that you have not already outlived. The court fills with confidence it has not earned. Men argue more loudly now, convinced the danger has passed. Treaties are discussed as inconveniences. Raids are proposed as opportunities. You listen, and you remember the way the enemy army looked before it broke. Huge, careless, certain. You try to slow them. You speak of restraint, of time bought at a terrible price. Some hear you. Many do not. Victory has a way of teaching the wrong lessons. At night, when the city sleeps, the battle returns in fragments. The sound of hooves becomes thunder in your skull. The smell of wet iron clings to everything. You dream of falling and never hitting the ground. When you wake, your hands are numb, your heart racing, your body soaked in sweat you cannot feel. The kingdom celebrates an ending. You feel only continuation. The enemy will rebuild. You will not. Every day now is subtraction. Strength leaves in small increments. barely noticeable until you try to stand and cannot. Still, you rule. From a chair, from a bed, from memory. The men who rode with you remember the charge, remember the impossible, and for a while that is enough. It holds the line. It keeps the enemy cautious, circling instead of striking. But you know what this victory really was. A delay carved out of flesh. The rain washed the battlefield clean, but it did not wash away the future. It is already moving toward you, patient, reorganizing itself, waiting for your body to finish what the disease has started. You stare at your hands in the lamplight, at the wrapped shapes that no longer feel like yours, and you understand something with brutal clarity. You did not win because you were strong. You won because you were already dying, and that made you dangerous in a way the living rarely are. The question now is not whether the enemy will return, it is whether anyone left behind will remember why they survived at all. Time does not rush after the battle, it stalks. It waits until the noise fades, until the ground hardens again, until people convince themselves the worst is past. Only then does it begin to collect what it is owed. Your body feels different now, not weaker in the obvious way, but quieter. Sensation retreats in patches like a map being erased one province at a time. You notice it when a servant spills hot water near your foot and screams before you do. You notice it when a needle goes in and you only see the skin dimple. Feel nothing until blood appears. Pain has abandoned you, but so has warning. The kingdom breathes again. Markets reopen. Fields are replanted. The walls of Jerusalem echo with confidence that sounds almost like joy. People talk about the battle as if it sealed something shut forever, as if armies once shattered never reform. You sit in council and listen to men speak with the certainty of those who did not pay with their bodies. North and south, the enemy rebuilds quietly. Discipline returns first. Survivors are gathered, punished, reorganized. New recruits arrive who did not see the rain, who did not hear the screams in the wadi. They hear stories instead, distorted, softened. Fear dulls with distance. You try to govern like a man who understands entropy. You ration aggression. You enforce truces. You remind your commanders that speed and surprise saved them once and will not again. Some nod, some smile. Some wait for you to stop speaking so they can continue believing whatever suits them best. Your strength fades in increments too small to argue with. One morning you cannot mount a horse without help. Another morning you cannot feel the reins at all. Eventually you stop trying. The horse is led beside you, ceremonial, useless. When you ride again, it is on a litter slung between animals, your body swaying gently as if already practicing for something final. The enemy notices this. They test the borders more boldly now, raiding just far enough to provoke but not commit. You order responses that are sharp but limited. You want them uncertain, cautious. It works for a while. Inside your chambers, light becomes an enemy. Your eyes ache constantly, nerves inflamed, vision blurring without pattern. You recognize faces by voice, by movement. The world narrows. Power, once exercised through presence, now flows through intermediaries you do not entirely trust. The court grows louder as you grow quieter. Ambition smells different from fear, oily, warm, persistent. Men who once deferred now argue openly, positioning themselves for a future they assume will arrive soon. You watch them maneuver around your bed like traders around a weakening market. When the enemy lays siege to a fortress east of the Dead Sea, you insist on being carried with the army. The reaction is immediate. Shock, fear, compliance. Your presence alone forces a retreat before a blow is struck. The enemy remembers the charge, remembers the impossible, and pulls back rather than test whether the memory still has teeth. This becomes your weapon. Not steel, not numbers, yourself. A symbol sustained by inertia and reputation. You're carried from place to place like a warning made flesh. It works, but each journey leaves you worse. Fever lingers longer, wounds close more slowly, sleep becomes fractured, shallow. At night, you feel your body slipping away in sections. Hands first, feet, then parts of your face, numbness creeping inward. You touch your cheek and feel pressure without detail, like touching through cloth. Mirrors are removed quietly without discussion. The enemy waits. This is their strength now. They have learned. They probe without overcommitting, retreat without panic. Their leader no longer underestimates you. He speaks of you rarely, but when he does, it is with caution, not contempt. He understands something your own nobles do not, that a dying man can be more dangerous than a healthy one, but only for so long. Inside Jerusalem, discipline erodes as memory fades. Younger knights talk about glory, older ones talk about profit. Treaties are broken in small ways that feel insignificant at the time. One caravan seized, one raid tolerated. Each infraction teaches the enemy something about your limits. You intervene when you can. You punish when necessary. But your reach shortens. There are days you cannot sit upright. There are days you cannot speak above a whisper. Authority drains not because you lose your will, but because biology does not negotiate. The battle returns to you in fragments, not as triumph, but as texture. The sound of rain on canvas, the smell of crushed grass and blood, the moment when momentum tipped, and the impossible became real. You understand now that it was never repeatable. It was a singular alignment of exhaustion, arrogance, terrain, and your own indifference to survival. The kingdom mistakes this uniqueness for destiny. They think courage can always substitute for preparation, that faith can replace logistics. You try to correct them. You fail more often than you succeed. The enemy's leader rebuilds patiently, training men to endure heat and thirst, drilling formations that do not break under surprise. He studies the mistakes that nearly killed him. You study the weaknesses in your own ranks. The difference is time. He has it. You do not. Your blindness arrives gradually, like dusk rather than night. Colours fade first, then edges. Faces become silhouettes. Eventually even silhouettes dissolve. Sound becomes your primary map. You learn the rhythm of the palace by footsteps, the difference between sincerity and ambition, by breathing patterns and pauses. When you die is no longer a mystery. It is a schedule without a date. You plan around it anyway. You arrange succession, balance factions, delay decisions that will ignite violence too soon. Some listen, some smile and plan anyway. Outside, the land recovers from devastation. Crops grow, roads reopen, life resumes. This too is deceptive. Recovery masks vulnerability. People forget how close extinction felt. You feel it every morning when you wake and test what still belongs to you. The list shortens, yet you remain lucid, painfully so. You understand exactly what is coming, and exactly how unprepared everyone else is for it. The enemy sends envoys. Their tone is respectful now, careful. They speak as if addressing a storm that might pass or might not. You answer with restraint, buying time measured in seasons rather than years. When you're alone, you confront the truth without ceremony. The battle did not save the kingdom. It postponed its reckoning. You did not change the direction of history. You bent it briefly, at tremendous personal cost. Your body is the ledger of that cost, numb, scarred, failing. You accept this without bitterness. You never expected longevity. What unsettles you is how little others seem to understand the bargain you made on their behalf. As your world darkens, you focus on the one thing still within reach: delay. Every month bought is another harvest, another reinforcement, another chance for someone else to learn what survival actually demands. You're not afraid of dying. You're afraid of being replaced by men who think survival is a reward rather than a discipline. The enemy waits for the day you stop being carried onto battlefields, the day your name loses its edge. You wait for nothing. You simply endure, spending what remains of your body to keep the future at bay for as long as physics allows. The day you can no longer rise without being lifted is the day the room changes its posture toward you. Chairs are placed closer, voices soften, then sharpen when they think you cannot hear. Power, once something you carried, now arrives only when summoned, and it never stays long. Your body has crossed a threshold. What sensation remains is unreliable, flickering in and out like a faulty signal. Heat and cold register as ideas rather than feelings. Hunger appears without appetite. Sleep comes in thin sheets tearing at the edges. When you wake, it takes time to remember where you are, who has entered the room, what decisions are waiting for you to make. You make them anyway. Outside the city, the enemy tightens the rhythm of pressure. Not invasions, tests, small, precise movements designed to measure response time, coordination, resolve. Each raid is a question asked with steel. Your answers grow slower, mediated through men whose courage is not always matched by judgment. Inside the court, impatience curdles into recklessness. Treaties become suggestions, warnings become inconveniences. Men who never smelled the rain-soaked waddy speak of honour as if it were an unlimited resource. You correct them when you can. When you cannot, you watch damage accumulate. Your vision fails completely during one of these councils. The light collapses inward until there is nothing left to collapse. Darkness arrives without drama. Someone gasps. Someone swears. You sit still, letting the silence settle. When you speak, your voice is steady. Blindness changes nothing essential. You have been governing without sight for months already. From then on, information becomes tactile. Reports are read aloud. Maps are traced into your palm. You memorize terrain by description and repetition, reconstructing the world inside your head because the physical one has withdrawn. It is exhausting in a way no one else can see. The enemy's leader understands this shift better than your own nobles. He knows you're still dangerous, but only in narrow, specific ways. He avoids pitched battle. He targets logistics, wells, herds, roads. He applies pressure that does not require him to be present. This is how he wins, by letting time do what armies cannot. You feel time constantly now, not as memory, but as weight. Your joints stiffen irreversibly. Fingers curl inward. Ulcers open without pain and refuse to close. Infection becomes a daily risk, managed through vigilance rather than comfort. You are cleaned, wrapped, repositioned. Your body is no longer private. The kingdom senses this vulnerability and reacts poorly. Factions harden. Loyalties shift. Men choose sides not based on strategy, but on who they think will survive longest. You counterbalance them as best you can, appointing, removing, delaying. Governance becomes triage. There is a moment when a senior noble speaks openly of preparing for what comes after you. He uses the language of prudence. You let him finish. Then you remind the room that survival is not inherited automatically. It has to be earned every day, often by people who will never enjoy the result. Your words land unevenly. Some understand. Most do not. Beyond the walls, refugees begin to move again, not fleeing battle but anticipating it. They remember what happened when preparation lagged behind confidence. They watch the enemy's movements and trust their instincts more than proclamations. The roads fill quietly. This alarms you more than any raid. You order reinforcements to key fortresses. Supplies are redistributed. Garrisons rotate to prevent complacency. These measures are necessary and insufficient. You know it. The men carrying out your orders know it. The difference between you is that you accept it without illusion. At night, the memory's thin. The charge that once arrived in fragments now comes whole, vivid, and unmanageable. The sound of impact, the compression of bodies, the moment when the enemy line ceased to exist as a coherent thing. You relive it not with pride, but with clinical clarity. You see exactly why it worked, and exactly why it will not again. Your health collapses sharply after one journey too many. Fever spikes and does not break. The physicians whisper words you have heard before, only now they sound less theoretical. You drift in and out of consciousness, waking to make decisions you may not remember later. The kingdom functions anyway, imperfectly, dangerously. During one lucid stretch, you finalize arrangements that have been waiting for the right moment. Succession, regents, constraints designed to slow the inevitable rush toward catastrophe. You sign with a hand guided by someone else, the act of writing reduced to intention rather than motion. The enemy hears of your decline and responds with patience. No triumph, no celebration. He understands that rushing now would teach the wrong lesson. He waits for certainty, for the moment when your presence no longer alters calculations. Inside Jerusalem the air thickens with rumour. Some say you will recover. Some say you already have. Some speak of you in the past tense while standing in the same room. You conserve energy by ignoring most of it. Your body shrinks. Muscle wastes, bones protrude, the bandages become permanent. When servants lift you, they do so with the practiced ease reserved for fragile objects. You do not resent this. Fragility has been your condition for years. What matters is whether it still intimidates anyone who matters. You sense the answer changing. Orders are followed with a fraction less urgency. Advice arrives coloured by ambition rather than necessity. The delay you created is nearly spent. Still, you hold. Through presence, through memory, through the residue of fear left behind by one afternoon when physics and psychology align just long enough to rewrite expectations. You know the end will not be dramatic. No final charge, no last speech, just absence, followed by recalculation. The enemy will move then, efficiently, without hatred. The men who replace you will mistake confidence for competence and pay for it with speed. As the fever ebbs and flows, you fixate on a single stubborn thought. You did not save the kingdom. You taught it how survival actually works, under conditions stripped of romance. Whether anyone learned is not something you can control. Your breathing slows. Darkness is complete now, unbroken by memory or light. The world continues, reorganizing itself around the space you're gradually vacating. You remain for the moment a problem that time has not fully solved. The end does not arrive like a battle. There is no sound of hooves, no compression of air, no moment when momentum tips. It arrives as subtraction, breath by breath, decision by decision, handed off to others who carry them less carefully. Your body becomes almost abstract, weight without strength, shape without function. The fever recedes, not because you are healing, but because there is less of you left for it to burn. The physicians stop arguing and start managing decline. They keep you clean. They keep you conscious when they can. They no longer speak of recovery. The kingdom senses the shift immediately. Authority leaks before it disappears. Orders are debated instead of executed. Delays creep in, subtle but compounding. You hear it in the reports read aloud at your bedside, in the way men emphasize their own initiative, preparing for a world where your name is no longer sufficient to compel obedience. Outside the walls, the enemy moves with careful confidence. No reckless thrusts, no grand declarations. Supply lines tighten, outlying positions are tested and abandoned. Pressure increases without spectacle. This is not vengeance, it is correction. You are told, gently, that you should rest. You do not argue. Rest and wakefulness have blurred into the same thin state. When you are awake, you listen. When you are not, the kingdom continues anyway, shedding the discipline you enforce through sheer presence. The men who replace you do not understand what you are doing. They mistake stillness for weakness, delay for indecision. They believe strength announces itself. They believe the enemy will behave as he did before humiliation taught him patience. You feel the moment your body finally stops responding to commands. Fingers no longer obey intention. Breath requires attention. The effort of remaining present outweighs the effort of letting go. When you die, it is quiet. No witnesses except servants who have learned to read the smallest changes. Someone closes your eyes. Someone covers your face. The room exhales. The kingdom reacts in stages. First, shock. Then relief. Then ambition. Councils convene immediately, filled with men who have rehearsed this moment for years. They speak of unity. They speak of strength. They speak of God's favour. They speak quickly, before caution can reassert itself. The enemy waits only long enough to confirm what he already knows. The problem has resolved itself. The variable that disrupted his calculations is gone. He moves not with rage, but with method. Within 2 years, the discipline you imposed erodes completely. Raids escalate into provocations. Provocations into campaigns. The army marches in heat without water, trusting confidence to substitute for logistics. The old lessons are remembered incorrectly, stripped of context and consequence. When the decisive battle comes, it is the inverse of everything you engineered. No surprise, no compression, no exploitation of arrogance. The enemy controls terrain, tempo, supply. Fire replaces rain. Thirst replaces momentum. Men collapse before contact. The formation breaks inward, not outward. The relic that once stiffened resolve is captured, turned into an object rather than a weapon. The psychological center collapses. Survival becomes individual rather than collective. The city you protected for as long as biology allowed surrenders without massacre. The enemy understands optics as well as physics. Mercy now is more useful than terror. He walks through the gates with restraint, not triumph. History rearranges itself around these outcomes. Victors become protagonists. Defeats are summarized, simplified, moralized. Your name appears as an anomaly, a footnote that does not fit the arc, It is inconvenient to remember that the enemy once ran, that certainty once broke under the weight of a dying body refusing to behave as expected. Centuries pass, stone erodes, records thin, the battle becomes a statistic, then a curiosity, then a story told incorrectly. Eventually it becomes content, stripped of texture, smoothed into inspiration, or dismissed as myth. What is lost is the reality of the trade you made, not glory for sacrifice, but time for tissue. You did not conquer. You delayed. You did not save. You bought space for others to learn and failed to ensure they did. The truth is colder and more instructive than legend allows. You were effective because you had already accepted death, because you did not require survival to justify action, because you understood that fear, once neutralized internally, becomes a weapon externally. The enemy learned from you. That is the final irony. He abandoned arrogance. He embraced patience. He treated time as a resource rather than an enemy. He won not by force of will, but by alignment with reality. Your own people did not learn quickly enough. They mistook the exception for the rule. They believed courage could permanently offset preparation. They forgot that the battle worked because everything broke in precisely the right order, and because you were willing to spend yourself completely to force that break. In the end, nothing supernatural happened. There was no intervention, only physics, psychology, exhaustion, timing, and a body that no longer cared about preserving itself. That is why the story remains unsettling when told accurately. It does not promise salvation. It does not reward virtue. It does not suggest that suffering ennobles. It demonstrates something far less comfortable, that under extreme conditions, effectiveness belongs to those who have nothing left to protect, and that such effectiveness is inherently temporary. The dust settles. The maps are redrawn. Names change hands. The world continues. What remains of you is not a miracle, not a symbol, not a lesson easily packaged. It is a moment when expectation failed, when a system built on confidence encountered a variable it could not model, a human body already collapsing, applying itself one last time with total indifference to outcome. That is the part history struggles to keep. Not the victory, but the cost structure. Not the charge, but the condition that made it possible. If there is a legacy, it is this. Survival is not a reward. It is a process that consumes resources, including people. When those people are gone, the process does not stop. It simply reallocates consequences. You delayed the inevitable. You bent probability. You proved that the impossible is sometimes only the improbable under the right constraints. Then you died, and probability resumed its work.